All right. John, you back, sir?
Yeah, I'm back.
All right.
Put the presentation up.
All right. And just as a reminder, I am recording this.
Okay. Are we ready to go?
Yeah, let's go. We got 20 people. It's 1:15.
Okay, so Dr. Bartlett submitted these edits. He wanted to remove the existing A and B and replace that with a new requirement. I don't think Dr. Bartlett is on today's call though to discuss this.
I don't believe he is either.
So I guess, is there anyone that, another stakeholder that wants to speak to this? All right, my suggestion is just to leave it and let's see if we can catch it next meeting. But I don't see that's a problem because it's probably an either or. The one thing I would ask maybe the stakeholders to think about, including the utilities, is I do think A and B are sort of accepting of the fact, meaning the original A and B here are accepting of the fact that we have no consensus on metrics and aren't likely to come to any consensus. And we didn't want that to hold up the regs. I do think that in the end, there needs to be a reporting of some metrics. And I feel like, you know, the commission will make the ultimate decision. But if we go in with just A and B, and this, you know, the other stakeholders propose C in a rulemaking proceeding, I don't think that C is unreasonable. So I'm just warning that, you know, I really feel like, you know, there needs to be some consideration given by the utilities to having some metrics in the plan.
John, don't we have a big spreadsheet on metrics?
We do, and the problem, and Samri can talk to it now if she would like, because she's been editing it. But and I could put it up, but I don't think there's much consensus at all.
Right. Let me go ahead, Ethan.
Hi, thank you. Just wanted to point out that A is covered in the November CSNA Section 7802 reports. Reliability, as we've noted multiple times, is in the annual liability report. Resilience is currently, there is a report being developed. The next report of the resilience work group is coming in May, where they are working on metrics there that will be recommended. DER integration is in the interconnection reports. And so, you know, we're bringing it down to really E through H and I are things that we're actually going to be bringing out when we talk about the constraints. So those are all going to be covered too. So I appreciate where Dr. Bartlett was going here, but this is all covered.
I'm sorry, Ethan, you said E through I will be covered
in the, when we report on constraints, when we report on, well, actually not E. E, load and demand management, is in the Empower reporting. And so F through I, when we report on hosting capacity, on constraints, non-wire solutions that have been recommended, and stakeholder engagement, those are all going to come right out of the actual reporting that's in this set of regulations already. And we've been following the rule of the commission Seth, that we would not to bring in outside reporting into this, and to make sure that this program at the end of the day delivers a point for stakeholder engagement on distribution system planning, which is what F through H contain, and then the stakeholder engagement comes out of this process. So,
All right. Well, I think in the end, we can continue to refine the spreadsheet, and I think it'll be probably, at least I'm going to recommend to Chuck that he send it in with the proposed regulations and just, indicate that we will be seeking commission direction since we had no consensus here. And,
John, even if we, would it be helpful to look at the spreadsheet?
Sure, I could bring it up.
I don't think it'll hurt. It might. There's got to be something we can agree on.
Yeah, I would ask maybe if Samri might consider leading some of this discussion, since I think Samri pulled this together. But in any case, here's what we have, and I don't think we.
Is there any way to make it bigger for old eyes, or are we going to lose all the data?
Well, we'll probably lose a lot of the data. It was sent out with Chuck's email, but when you look at it, I think that the operative columns are I through O, and let me see if I can't hide a column or two here, so I can. All right, so reliability and resilience. I don't think we got. I'm hiding all the columns. I don't think we'd have anything from. To see if I can get it blown up. Oh. Having trouble hiding some of these columns. All right, so the three primary groups that commented are OPC staff and Exelon Utilities. So basically, here's what you have. You have basically OPC wanting all these metrics included. Staff, some of them, consistent with the order, I think staff didn't recommend reliability here, but and Exelon Utilities sort of indicating, that these things are covered in other areas. So is there anything that we can agree on here? I think that.
Go ahead, Andy.
Just wanted to flag, I'm looking, Chuck, at your version, and it's column H. I don't know that the consolidated metrics included our recommendations for which of these would be perhaps better served by the discussion surrounding the standard bench data request that was brought up earlier by OPC. So I just wanted to flag that, and then another comment being, John, to your comment of where OPC's column here is filled out with many of them being ESP, and staff has some being ESP and some other work groups. We, as I kind of indicated in my email to the group, but just to reiterate, our perspective on developing these was, if it's another related work group where staff has identified through their review that, yes, that is kind of under the umbrella of another work group, but that specific metric is not currently published in the regulation, we sort of put ESP as a placeholder to say, and until it's taken up by that group, then we recommend furtherance of, developing those here within the ESP work group. So just to be clear on what our perspective was developing these recommendations.
All right. Shamri?
Yes, I think similar to Andy's, we've identified some matrices that we thought could be covered either in the ESP work group or move to the respective work groups. Some like reliability matrix related matrices could be, the commission could either direct the matrices be covered in their dockets or here, but we just wanted them covered. So we had like ESP/reliability if it's a reliability related matrix.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think things like substation overload conditions, I don't know, see, there's no metric defined. It's just it says substation overload conditions. So you got to go further than just recommending a metric on substation overload conditions. You probably
Well, John, if I may jump in here, that was actually used in the 9240 case. That was the capacity planning metric that was submitted in 9240, and it was essentially a bar chart showing the total number of substations, the number of them in overload conditions, and then it would move. Then what you would see on like a quarterly or annual basis is when a solution had been implemented to remove the overload condition, you would see, say, out of 50 substations, 49 in normal conditions and one with a constraint on it. You would see that being reduced, suddenly 50 that were all with no constraints. And so it was a very simple and straightforward metric for people to see how the overload conditions were being met.
Yeah, but to have it in, so you're not opposed to that in ESP. You think that's applicable?
We actually recommended it because it's something we've seen.
Is that wording somewhere else?
Just look at those. The call Q3Q is where we talk about it, because this was
Okay. It's under reliability and resilience. That's why I'm missing it. So, so you're saying this?
Yes.
So I'm just going to move it here.
Okay.
Okay. So we got one that I'm just going to highlight this in blue. Hey, we got a metric. Okay, maybe you'll point me to another place. Is there any other places here that I can add a metric, Ethan?
That's all I can help you with.
All right, so we got one metric.
No, I think, Ethan, I thought there were some at the end around the stakeholder engagement that staff had recommended.
Okay. So these two here. And the rest of these are non-consensus, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're correct, John.
All right. So what I'll do for the next, the problem is we don't have really any direction on how to calculate these metrics. So I guess it's one thing. I could just put it in there: stakeholder engagement, stakeholder diversity, and stakeholder engagement, but without totally defining it. But somewhere along the lines, I don't think the commission wants to see every utility doing things differently.
I think, John, you may have hit column B for purpose of compressing the data, but I think column B is at least supposed to be a little bit more of a description of what's
All right.
Okay. There we go.
All right. Numbers, DSP stakeholder. Okay.
And stakeholder diversity. That could be a lot of things.
How would you define it, diversity?
Hey, John, I think we provided some comments. If you go to the comment section, what we meant by diversity.
All right, so you're just saying number.
Number for the first one, and I guess types for the second.
Right. Customer class,
All right.
different.
All right. I
Yes.
can work with that.
All right.
And then I have to go back at 9240 and look at what was done there. But, you know, I need to have some wording to some extent if we're going to put a metric in here. All right, Chuck, where do you want to go with this?
Well, I think, like you said, it's a lot of non-consensus. We'll just have to figure if we can come up with something for the stakeholder, the language on that. But otherwise, it looks like it's a lot of non-consensus because I know OPC disagrees with what they call siloing, and they're going to request that the commission reconsider that.
Yeah.
I mean, I would push back a little bit on that respectfully, Chuck. I understand that is true, that's been OPC's stance, and I'd also say here that seems to be a fair amount of I think that language, sorry to back up and caveat my statement a bit, the language from the order was about the copy and paste of existing regulations into the DSP. Right. And so recognize the discussions about that and the difference in opinion. However, with this, where there's been a number of, like I mentioned earlier, alignment between OPC and staff on some of these metrics that they could relate to DSP or electric system planning topics and are also overlapping with other work groups, and yet the existing regs are not published. And so I think maybe that form of non-consensus is more coming from, at least in my perception, the utilities sort of stance on not wanting to introduce them here in absence of being currently in regs elsewhere.
Okay, that's
Andy, are you
Andy, I apologize if I mischaracterized.
No worries. Yeah, no worries.
Go ahead, Ethan.
No, Andy, are you backing off of Mr. Auslander's statements? Because he's been very clear about this. What?
Clear about what?
That OPC's position was that the commission was in error in its decision that to keep metrics from other.
He's got his hand. He's got his hand up. So go ahead.
Clarify what I was saying.
I'm not really understanding
I'll let Jake.
Difference of opinion or misinterpretation is that.
I'll let Jake talk for OPC. But real quick, Jake, I just wanted to clarify my statement I just made was just in response to what Chuck kind of said, because it was I'm presuming that would be sort of language that might make its way to a stakeholder working group report, that the failure to achieve consensus here is only because of OPC's.
No, that's not what I intended. I apologize.
I didn't think so. I just wanted to say it. Thanks, Chuck. Thanks.
All right. Go ahead, Jacob.
Okay, thank you. So I think our view is that that a lot of these metrics that we put on this chart are directly related to electric system planning, and so we actually think it's consistent with the order to include them in the draft regs. But we also recognize that there is a difference of opinion on that. We've tried to address that by recategorizing some of the metrics that we proposed as ones that might be more appropriate for discovery. And then I'd say at this point, our largest concern is that the data be available somewhere and accessible to stakeholders somehow so that they can meaningfully participate in this process. So I don't know if that helps, Ethan.
Very much appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
Great. Thanks.
On the overload conditions, Ethan, why just substation and why not feeder? I know you're using 9240 as a model, but I would think that feeder overload conditions would be another.
We just went with, that was just reflecting 9240.
Yeah, I think that one of the previous commission orders wanted granularity down to the feeder level if there was constraints. So can I suggest that overload conditions also include feeder, meaning a separate metric for feeder overload and a separate metric for substation overloads?
I'm waiting for an engineer to respond. Let us take that back for a moment. I need to get an engineer to weigh in on that.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so let me go back to the regs. I'm going to get rid of this for now. I'm going to reject this change because we have and we have two separate proposals here. I'm not going to get rid of Dr. Bartlett's proposal until he's had a chance to advocate for it, hopefully at the next meeting. But I would like to just maybe get the agreements that
Go ahead, Ethan.
Just got an okay on reporting on the feeders.
all right.
So cool.
All right. So say something like an electric system. Well, we'll worry about the wording later, but these are the metrics we've agreed. Overload conditions observed on substation require mediation, feeder overload. Stakeholder diversity.
Stakeholder numbers.
Yeah, I don't know how I didn't include that. Sorry.
No, you're fine. There you go. That's not, do we want the events or do we want the attendance?
I think the second one is supposed to cover like who attended.
Okay. Yeah, I guess.
I can't use parentheses, so and I probably want to use something different than stakeholder, do I not?
Oh, God. Maybe just put get rid of stakeholder and put diversity in terms of numbers of residential customers, businesses, groups that attended the events.
Yeah. Let me just call it engagement diversity.
Do we even need diversity in there? I mean, that's just a suggestion.
What would you suggest?
I mean, do you even need it? Engagement in terms of the number of residents. I think it says the same thing, doesn't it?
Well, I'm asked, I'm just,
Yeah, this is the audience participation portion of the program. Anybody care about this, or not care, but is that wording okay?
Right. It's I'm not sure what the difference is between C and D. I think what we wanted to capture in engagement stakeholder diversity is like different customer classes, types of I don't know if customer class would be, you know, something we want to add, but yeah, different customer classes, environmental groups, low income communities. So it wasn't so much about like the number of attendants, but the diversity of the attendance.
yeah, but I think we're trying to get away from using the term diversity.
I mean, it's fine if we do. It's fine. I mean, I don't care one way or the other. I just thought.
How about stakeholder classification?
I think the commission would be interested to see how many people actually attend these things too. Not necessarily, you know, we have 3 classes of customers. Go ahead, Damon.
Yeah, I guess I'm getting confused because I'm just trying to figure out how to calculate this. Is this just like a number? I'm sorry, my simple math mind here, but it just feels like it's a narrative, which we're going to provide, I'm sure, as part of our reporting, just like what stakeholder events we had and who showed up, right? I mean, happy to report out on that. Just feels like this is an odd thing to put as a metric. So like certainly no issue with having something that requires us to describe you know, the stakeholder participation. It just feels like this is a narrative. This isn't a number, unless you can tell me how to calculate that. If you just want like 4 different people showed up, we'll use 4. I don't know. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, I'm struggling with D because I think C, it lends itself to a metric, but to Damon's point, D is more of a narrative.
But isn't C already addressed with the discrete points? They have to have.
Yeah.
Isn't it going to be the same for everybody? We had two meetings. I mean, maybe BGE and maybe the larger utilities have more meetings because they have a larger footprint. Andrea.
Yeah, and I think, remember, we also have to provide a list of stakeholders engaged and stuff like that. So I think the D is also handled in our reporting.
Yeah, I think we should stick with that. I don't know that it's going to add any value having a metric here in addition to what's already required. But I guess staff proposes, so I feel like summary, any rebuttal on that?
Right. I'm not sure if we specified the stakeholder stuff.
You mean like who's attending?
Right. I mean,
like in numbers
right.
and things like that.
And the number of events. I think it's only today we discussed that maybe we should have a meeting somewhere. So I don't know. We can take it back and provide additional feedback, but I didn't think the metric, the stakeholder engagement, I think we deleted a bunch of stuff today. So I don't know.
It might be as easy as going back to where we talk about the different engagement points and, add in, a phrase that requires the utilities to include the synopsis of the event, who attended, that kind of thing, if it's not already in there.
Right. I think that could work. I mean, if we add in some additional information about like what's provided as part of the stakeholder engagement in the reporting piece of it, I think we would be okay with it.
Okay.
All right. So this is what we have so far. So I kind of indicated that because we have a preliminary electric system plan, we have an annual electric system plan update. And we have a C of this regulation, which is all that we've agreed to. So that's where we landed until next meeting where we'll discuss the. All right.
All right.
All right.
Look at that. We're flying.
Yeah. 06. I think we agreed to get rid of. No, we didn't. We modified this because this is updates to project status. And then I don't have a problem adding that.
I think, John, that was when I thought we were going to get rid of the number 1.
Yeah.
That was just making it clear. But if we have this template, I think you want to take that out.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right. This wording that was originally there is directly from the legislation. So I am really loath to change that because it is the exact wording from what I recall.
Can we get rid of diligently? Because it really doesn't have any meaning in regulations. I know they used it, but
I would point you to the statute. I don't feel like I should be tinkering with the statute.
the other thing is they refer to 2 things that this administration pulling back on. So that's why I marked those off. Not this administration being the federal.
Right.
So I don't know if we should be, they kind of pointed to the fact that they don't really want those anymore.
You prefer just to end it after electric system period?
Yeah. Yes, that would be my preference.
Go ahead, Damon.
Yeah, I don't have too much concerns, but I would just say that as a matter of form, if it's in statute, there's no need to put it in regulation. We shouldn't say anything, even if it's a cut and paste. Like it just creates a forum for ambiguity and problems. If it's in statute, it's in statute.
Yeah. How about this? Because you bring up a good point, Damon.
Yeah, if we're just reiterating it, if it's saying the same thing.
I would like to at least have it because of the fact that it is a statute requirement. I don't want to lose. And I think it's in 7.2, or is it BU 7805 or 6?
Right. And just leave it like that.
That works.
Okay. Does anybody remember if it's 5 or 6? Subject to check.
Oh, I don't know. I don't have my book in front of me. Let me look it up.
All right. So that's all we'll do here. I guess I should put.
Hey, I'm sorry, John. Can we just clarify number 1 again? Is this going to be? I thought we just discussed that we would file that template with our
Exactly.
plan, but
there was a timing difference here, so we just said material updates.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
I think it's 803, John.
803.
Yeah, and it said the General Assembly strongly encourages electric companies to pursue diligently.
Yeah, so I will say strongly encourage is very different than shall. And my only concern is this. There are real, like, we can't always pursue federal funding because sometimes it doesn't make sense, or sometimes, frankly, the cost of pursuing it, that there's always a 50% match, and there are all sorts of compliance things which actually cost a lot of money. So sometimes you can't actually pursue certain things. So saying shall pursue, oh, you changed it.
Yeah.
There you go. Thank you.
Chuck, I can get rid of the whole thing. It's your decision. Really.
Well, I mean, I think I agree with Damon. If it's already in the statute, do we really need just to regurgitate it again in regs? I mean, what? Let me go back. I was just going on Lexus. I mean, I think what you have there is fine. I mean, it's a synopsis of the statute.
No, you could argue the same thing for A, but I really feel like that's part of the process.
Right.
And by the way, the reason we have to use shall in here is because the statute can say the commission shall. So, versus may. All right, so you can soak with it. I think we need to go back up to 1 now.
Sure. All right. Provide safe and any objection to that on 1A?
Yeah, I have an objection because it's already included in the goals. So it's, the goals, I actually, safe, I'm not sure safe is in the goals, but definitely reliable.
Yeah, we were objecting to creating some new standard. I mean, our obligation is safe and reliable service, and that had like efficient and something else in there.
All right.
That's
I'm not going to quibble with it. I agree with you to that extent. All right. I think you're going to get kickback on removing generation, transmission, because especially transmission, because that was part of the statute. And the commission specifically wanted an integrated system plan, and they didn't want it to be just siloed based on distribution. They also wanted to know how distribution planning could positively impact the need for transmission and general resource adequacy.
Go ahead, Andrea, then Ethan.
Yeah, I guess the way it's written works for a vertically integrated utility. I don't know how we coordinate across generation, transmission, distribution, customer. I mean, we can consider, we don't know much about generation, right?
Okay.
We don't know what's coming, what's going, like we don't really have insight to that. Transmission, we do have transmission, but that, I guess our kind of marking was that's done at a at the PJM level, so we can have inputs into that through our where I don't know where it went.
Yeah, well, I'm just pointing out the whole HB 1393, and it's now in statute somewhere.
Yeah, it's 8025.
Yeah, the focus is they deliberately took distribution system planning out and replaced that with electrics. They did not want this. The legislature did not want to just focus on distribution system planning. And, so I recognize.
Well, John, just to the extent we're talking about transmission, it looks like the word transmission is only referenced once in the statute, and it's really in reference to incorporation of energy storage technology as appropriate to provide additional capacity to accommodate increased distributed renewable energy generation in connection with electric transmission and distribution system modernization.
And we're doing that in the storage working group. I think so. Two things. First of all, we can't say coordinated, and we can't keep generation in. I think we can consider. I don't really know how we do look at in our distribution system planning. We do look at what PJM, because of course PJM does the planning, not us. The transmission level, we do look at what PJM comes up with. Of course, our team interacts with PJM by providing our load additions from our forecast and things like that, but we don't really control their plans.
I've sat in these meetings with the commissioners, and I know clearly we're going to get bombarded on this because the commission strongly believes that virtual power plants and things of that nature on the distribution side, need to be used and planned for to help deal with resource adequacy and with regards to transmission, basically alleviating the need for transmission. So,
can we just say consider the transmission distribution system customer loads then, and not be coordinated?
Well, if coordinated is hanging up, I don't have a problem removing coordinate, but I think it needs to consider, transmission and distribution. You can argue that generation is indirectly impacted here because really, if you're putting VPPs on the distribution system, you're alleviating the need for, transmission, due to the fact that, you're helping with that resource adequacy.
Do you even need that first sentence? Why don't we just start with an electric system plan?
That's a good thought.
I think we can do that.
Okay. Ethan and then Damon, go ahead, please jump in.
Thank you. I'm wondering what the purpose of including non-wire solutions in one is, since cost effective is there, and frankly, the struggle with deploying non-wire solutions is cost effectiveness. Okay. Thank you.
All right. So electric system to me means anything, meaning transmission or distribution. So I got rid of your transmission, but you can't get rid of it in the regs as far as I'm concerned.
Well, why don't we just say to electric distribution system needs?
Because of this.
Okay. All right.
I mean, the legislative intent.
Okay. Right now, I'm with you.
Yeah. All right, can we all agree with this? All right, we need Schmecko to get back to us on that. I was hoping you would have something, Damon, by this meeting, but can you give me an ETA when you're able to respond?
Yeah, and I had a comment on some of the preceding discussion too. We're working on it, John. I apologize. I think it's going to take us a little bit more time, but we'll work on it. Hopefully within. I know the next meeting is our last one, so certainly in time for that one.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, wait, here, go back up. Damon, you had a comment, sir?
Yeah. So, and I think actually some of the discussion on B, you know, to the earlier points being made about the new legislation, like that stuff is going to come into play there. So the generation, the transmission discussion, holistic planning, that new agency is going to be responsible for some of that in coordination with MEA, as they've been charged to do. The one thing I'll say on A, if I could, I hate to go back to A, but I'm going to. When we talk about the objective of the final plan, from SMECO's perspective, you know, I'd love to work the word affordability into affordable into that too. So safe, reliable, and affordable service. If there would be, you know, an appetite for that, because that's important to us as we plan our system. And I have to say, in all honesty, I still pause on the phrase cost-effective manner here, because frankly, cost-effective and the goals set forth in 7801 through 804 are not necessarily, you know, compatible at times. And so we just need to be mindful of that. Some of the stated policy goals do not necessarily always align well with cost effectiveness. And so I do struggle a little bit with that phrase, but affordability is something that we very much focus on as we plan our system. It's one of our core principles as a cooperative. And so maybe that's unique to us. I don't think it is necessarily so, but as we're talking about safety, reliability, to us, one of the other important prongs is affordability. So.
Go ahead, Andrea.
Yeah, I agree with you that is a purpose of ours as well, but I don't know how, well, some would argue we are never affordable, Damon, because we always have to increase rates. So putting that in there to me is a gotcha for utilities, because we're never going to be viewed by some as affordable unless we were to give it away for free. So I actually, like, we can measure safety, we can measure reliability. I would like to keep it at those measurable goals. And cost effectiveness, I actually, because that's all over the statutes and things, that's where affordability comes into play for us.
Yeah,
so
I hear you.
I'm
certainly won't follow my sword on this one, but I'll tell you, as a matter of practical planning, we're not going to put in a gigawatt battery because perhaps in part it's going to increase the cost of service for our customer members, and maybe that's specific to us, but it is a factor in our planning process. So,
and we would say cost effectiveness is. So I think it's a semantic difference, right? That to us, cost effectiveness helps keep the bills down, but affordability has no defined measure.
Yeah.
Is a really difficult one for us to have in a regulation.
I know when I look at I'm going to just put the commission's mission here for a second. I'll take it out, but this is the commission's mission. It says safe, reliable, and economic, not affordable. So you could argue, get rid of cost effective and just put economic, because that might kill two birds with one stone there and be aligned with the commission's mission.
Yeah, I don't know about economic personally. I don't know what that. But I hear you. But we have a proceeding like PC 59, which is very much focused on affordability and energy burdens, household energy burdens. So I mean, I think focusing on affordability is consistent with where this commission is focused, at least with some of the proceedings that are active today. But again, I wouldn't follow my sword on this one, but I think it is, for us, it is something that we will reflect in our planning process.
Yeah, and again, we do too. We just do it in the terms of cost effectiveness, which we can measure. So we don't need to fight over this more. I'm just saying it is not measurable. Neither is economic. Cost effectiveness is. We have tests for that. We have, things that we can, rely on. And in fact, we have UBCAs and things like that. So to us, measurability is important if it's going to be in the regs, and affordable is not measurable.
All right. Chuck, it's your decision.
Yeah, why don't we go with safe and reliable? I mean, in B, it's just you have to consider cost-effective solutions, not necessarily implement them.
All right. So before we get off of 01, anything else? All right.
Well, I guess I would only ask if we have it in B, do we need it in A, the phrase cost effective?
If we have it in B, do we need it? Oh, okay. Operates.
And I only say that because I think from our perspective, you could have something that passes a one, cost effectiveness test, but not necessarily contribute to affordable service. So to go back to the narrative there, I appreciate that we should evaluate solutions for cost effectiveness.
Just leave it like at that.
Yes.
Look good.
I'm okay with that, Chuck. So, and Andrea looks like she's okay with that. All right, I'm going to move on. I don't know that we should quibble with the definitions. I think we should just quibble with what should be included or not included. So, do we really need to have since we define all the requirements for an annual electric system update, do we really need this?
Yeah, I just, I think we've got 3 different reports and we talk about them. We have sections kind of interspersed within one another. So it's not entirely clear. I don't know. This is just the lawyer in me. Like, I would like something very clear that states what the 3 different reports are supposed to be, because when you get down to 3, 4, I think, or maybe it's 3 and 4, we kind of use them interchangeably at times. We use the substance for more than one type of report, and I think it can get confusing. That's all.
All right. Well, if the utilities want to propose definitions for these 3, we can consider them at the next meeting. At least that's my recommendation to you, Chuck.
Yeah, go ahead, Andrew. I'm
I
sorry.
was just going to say we'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, rather than trying to craft
Right.
them right now.
All right.
Yeah, this was us. Just kind of throughout our definitions, I think it's really important that if it's defined elsewhere, we just refer to it.
Yeah, no.
It's
Yeah,
already
we don't need to reinvent the wheel.
And there are some in here we'll get to that are EV related, and I didn't have the time to look up whether they were already defined, but I'm quite sure that some of them are. So, I just made note of that.
All right. I'm just accepting the non-wire solution. We don't have a base load, to my knowledge, used in this plan. We have a base scenario, but we don't have a base load. So a baseline scenario. I don't recall anywhere in here that we use base
You could
load.
do a find and see if it's anywhere else than this.
All right, 1 of 1. So you can see
Yeah.
it's not. So I'm just removing it.
Yeah.
All right. So now we have this baseline scenario, and there were no comments on it. So we're going to move on. We don't have core grid function anywhere, to my knowledge.
That doesn't sound familiar.
So yeah, it's 1 of 1. So I just, I think a lot of these were things talked about in the early stages of the work group, but were never really used anywhere. I'm not sure if we have demand flexibility. So let me do that's not used either. So demand response, I do think we use that. So I'm going to put it up here and just check. Yeah, we use it 3 different places. So we'll keep demand response. Accept the changes.
We don't have demand response defined anywhere else?
No, we do the 3 places.
Oh, okay.
You probably didn't see I did a control find.
Okay. No,
Upper
I'm sorry.
right-hand
No, I'm
corner.
just surprised we don't have it somewhere else.
Well, we
Yeah,
do.
this was, I think I put that up in there at one point just because it was used in the regulations here, and there I would be fine or whatever, you know.
Oh,
if
no,
you have
I'm
it
fine
elsewhere.
with keeping it. No, I'm fine with keeping it. Yeah.
Are you asking, Chuck, whether we've defined it elsewhere in Comar?
There's where we
Yes.
define
Yeah.
it.
That's,
Yeah.
I didn't know. I would
Yeah,
have thought it would be somewhere else in the regulations.
That
somewhere
might be
else in
one to
Comar.
check too, because I'd be surprised if it's not.
No, I got it on the screen. It's here.
John, we're just saying, you know how we're sticking to defining, if it's defined elsewhere in Comar, we just refer to that definition. We
I'm
were just
sorry.
wondering if maybe this one is
Yeah.
already defined elsewhere
Yeah.
and maybe we just refer to it. So maybe it's a good check.
I'll do a quick look, see if I can find it.
All right. I'll make a note. All right. Could be used in a PUA too.
Yeah, that's a good point too. If it's defined in statute, then we shouldn't be defining it
Yeah.
any differently here, for sure.
Yeah, and all these ESVEs, I think we're getting way. You know, there is V2G regulations where we have ESVEs defined. And I know this because, you know, it was RM87, which, you know, we define ESVE. Now, we didn't define ESVE capacity. So I'm going to recommend.
Yeah, and to the point of like, I think I added these as well, just because reading through and in reference to, I think, the metrics section. So this might also be a moot point for the time being if we're not going to include those specific EV metrics.
So I'm going to get rid of both of them for now. And energy storage is used somewhere else.
Yeah, we already define up above energy storage device and we refer to the storage regulations. So this would be duplicative.
Right.
It would be a different definition.
And I don't think we use invariable generation or generation attribute anywhere. So I'm going to get rid of them. Grid needs, I think we do use that. So let me do a check real quick. Yeah, we use it 16 different places. So that's a good one to define.
And for this one, our crossing out the example, it's really unusual to use example in the definitions unless they're needed to understand the actual definition. So we didn't think these examples were necessary.
I agree.
Hey, John, I found demand response program.
Yeah, it's different than demand response. So, so we'll leave this in.
Okay.
We'll check the PUA also, but I'm going to accept Andrea's suggestion. So we got grid needs.
So this one, oh, sorry, John.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, this one I was going to suggest a change to, because when the only time we use grid services, it doesn't match this definition because this is defining it as a technology or equipment. versus a service. So let me just find my note. I'm sorry. Give
Well,
me
grid services is already defined in RM 85.
Okay. Well, I
Remember?
don't think we used this phrase then, so maybe we need to get rid of it
Yeah.
and just say grid services as defined in RM 90, or wherever it's defined as the
Yeah.
meaning.
So we use grid services 4 places in the regs.
Right. It's just grid services though.
Right.
And in the definition, we're
Right.
defining grid services and demand management, which is not, I don't think we ever use demand management. So I'm suggesting we get rid of and demand management and then just say means has the same meaning as and refer to wherever it is already defined.
All right. So okay, I just made a note that we'll look at the energy storage.
Perfect.
Hosting capacity is already defined in the interconnection regs.
That would make sense to me.
Yeah. So I can add that.
Go ahead, Jacob Auslander.
I just wanted to, I think what John is putting here is fine. It's just if we're incorporating a definition from elsewhere, that's fine. It's just I'm worried that if we're just saying, oh, it's elsewhere in COMAR, so we don't need to worry about it. I mean, the way this section starts, it said in this section, right?
Right.
So, I guess you could say, you could argue by analogy, but if we're saying it's the same definition, maybe we should just say has the same meaning as.
That's what we're going to do.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, all these things where we're referring to other, I'm going to put the citations in. So variable generation is not used anywhere. I don't even think that BESS is used anywhere.
It's used in some of the definitions. So if we keep these definitions, which I don't think we use switch signal controlled appliances anywhere. So like that would probably go. And V to X, I'm surprised that's not already defined somewhere else.
Yeah, we didn't define that in the V2G because we were doing V2G.
Okay.
But let me check real quick to see if it's V2X is anywhere in here because I don't remember. Oh, there is a V2X under DER forecast, but I would like to get rid of it here because you manage EV charging, discharging. To me, that's V1G, which we do define in the V2G regs. We do define V1G, V2G. We do not define a V2X. So if I get rid of it here and some of these other definitions go away, I can get rid of using it in general in the regs.
That works for us. We're all about streamlining. Efficient use of definitions.
I forgot where I was though. All right.
I think you were at Bess, yeah, because you just looked up where it was.
Yeah. And likewise, I don't think we use combined heat and power anywhere.
I think we use it in one of the definitions, but if we're getting rid of that definition, we can get rid of that.
I don't think we use, do we use DERA anywhere? I know that there's a proposal that we've been working on in the interconnection work group for DERA. But yeah, that's used, that's like considerations, okay.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing it.
I don't remember either.
But if we are, I was going to suggest we use the FERC definition so that we're aligned. I couldn't find what that definition is.
Well, if it's not being used anywhere. We don't need to consider it in the regs. I didn't realize we had this many. All right, this I really feel like distributed generation is covered in COMAR in the interconnect regs, but I didn't look it up ahead of time.
That one surprised me too. And we had a comment just about the way that if this is going to be this way, like they have like mini nuclear now or whatever they call those micro nuclear plants. Are we considering that distributed generation? I think we got to be a little careful on how we define it.
We didn't. I'm looking at the interconnection regs, and we do define distributed energy resource, but we don't define anything for distributed generation. We do. That's because we call it a small generator facility instead of a distributed generator facility in the interconnection regs.
Got it.
And I think that the definition of small generator facility really is what is meant by distributed generation here. And I think we do use distributed generation in a couple places, right?
I can't remember. Oh, there's one. Yeah.
Yeah. So can subject to check. Can I suggest that distributed generation mean the same definition as small generator facility in the interconnection regs?
Yeah, we'd like to look at it, but that sounds reasonable, but we haven't looked at the actual definition yet.
Yeah. These are not final, but what I probably should have done, small generator facility was the original. Who knows why they did that versus distributed generation when they originally did those regs, but we've never changed it. I probably really should look in the interconnection work group at changing it to distributed generation. All right, I don't think we use this. EV is definitely covered in, I think we use a lot here, but I want to just refer to the B2G regs. So I'll try to put those in ESVE and EV, since I think we do use ESVE somewhere in here. I know we got rid of it earlier, but let's see. No, we don't use ESVE anywhere in the regs, so it's just EV. Goal scenario.
Yeah, we talk about it. We don't ever define it. And I think that's an important one to define. I don't know if we've done it else.
Can you guys suggest a proposal for that?
Yep.
All right. I don't think we use grid interactive energy efficient building. I'm surprised that, and I don't think we define inverter in the interconnection regs, which is my bad, but we don't even define smart inverter, but we have a whole section based on smart inverters. So, it's not defined, but regardless, I'm not even sure we use it.
Actually, I found it, John.
Okay.
It's in 2050-0902. It says 259, smart inverter means any inverter hardware system certified to be compliant with IEEE, yada, 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 or subsequent revisions to the standards. Here,
Oh, yeah, I found it too, in the interconnection. But here is just inverter.
Okay. Oh, okay. So
let me just do a quick check of inverter. And we use it 3 different places. Smart inverter.
utility.
So we'll get to it there. Yeah, that's actually, we're not using it anywhere but the definitions in the regs. So I'm recommending getting rid of all that if we're not using it. And I don't think we use charger either. I think.
Well, plus I think isn't EVSE the same as electric vehicle charger? So we should.
Yes, it is.
Twice. Well, I guess we wouldn't be, but if we didn't use EVSE.
Yeah, I think I added some of these EV ones because that metric section initially had interchangeable usage. So I wanted to spur the discussion of like, we either need to align the usage within that chapter or have multiple definitions. So I think, but given that there is like often like charger versus port, you know, there's confusion there in terms of what is being specified in terms of what I've seen play out over other DSPs. And so I think there is some ambiguity there, which more definitions can be helpful, but it does depend on, I think, the usage. And currently the metrics don't show that, but if they're added back in later, that would need to be defined.
All right, microgrid is only defined 4 places, and you can see them all on the screen. Excuse me, it's only in the definitions. Now, microgrid is defined in energy storage definitions. I don't think we use plug-in hybrid anywhere either. Again, it's probably one of those definitions that was associated with metrics, maybe. And we're not using smart inverter. I don't think we're using PV anywhere. Because in general, I think we just refer to DERs and we don't get them any specificity. I definitely don't think we're using this. We are using system constraints. So I'm just going to accept all these. Give everybody last chance to look at it. Well, one chance. I don't think we should put the PG stuff in here in the parens.
What about the for example part?
And or the for example. And I'd also just want to get rid of distribution and just say electric system. And not say unduly.
I guess for that one though, John, our distribution system planning process, the constraints we're looking at are on the distribution system, right? So that one, I would argue we do need distribution because we're not looking at the transmission system constraints. We're looking at that's a different process done by PJM. We have to look at the.
I hear you, but I'm telling you, the commission expects us to be using VPPs to deal with problems, and the statute now says electric system.
But this is violations to the distribution or the electric. Yeah. It's not VPPs would be solution, right? And this is talking about finding the actual constraints, and the only constraints we can report in our DSP is distribution level constraints. We can't, PJM is finding the transmission level constraints.
Chuck, it's your decision.
I'm sorry, I was, can you restate it one more time, please?
Yeah, so I know John is trying to be very aware of the fact that the commission wants to use VPPs
Right.
and things like that. My point here is the system constraints that we are actually finding in the DSP is distribution level. PJM finds constraints at the transmission level. So my suggestion is this is one area where we should have electric distribution system because it's the actual constraint. It's not the solution, and VPP is a solution. So we can make it broader when we're talking about solutions, but the actual constraints are on the distribution level.
That makes sense to me.
Be prepared for some kickback. So, okay, we established V2X wasn't used. I don't think zero electric vehicle emission vehicle is used either. We talked about stakeholder. So we have this definition for metrics. Do we really need to define metrics?
I would say no, but that's just me.
Staff proposed it, so I'm asked if staff wants to defend it.
I mean, we've got metrics elsewhere in Comar, right? I mean, why would we? I mean, I don't know. I think it's a given, but that's just me.
This is Paul. The reason this was added was because in some of the prior discussions, there seemed to be mixing planning data with metrics, which are a measure of performance. And so that's why this was added, just to clarify what is meant by a metric versus what is planning data.
All right, Chuck, your decision.
Yeah, I don't have a huge, I mean, one way or the other, I'm fine. I'm not really too concerned about it. If people want to leave it in, we can leave it in.
We call it planning metrics to make it very clear that we're talking about this proceeding.
If we make it planning metrics, then I got to use it back here, because we can't have something that's undefined. So I would have to say electric system plan metrics or planning metrics. Did you say we call it planning metrics, right?
That's what
Planning.
Ethan suggested. Paul, is that okay with you?
Yes, that's the intent.
All right. All right, so now we're on the last section, and we've got an hour and a half. Making good progress. So we're back at 3. Okay, nothing in the first item. I view all this as good additions. So, Chuck, unless you or any other stakeholders have a problem, I'm just going to accept all this.
Yeah, just so yes, everyone speak up for anyone who has an objection.
All right, I'll get to all this a little later, so we don't weigh down.
All right, here's
All right, same thing here. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. Okay.
all right. So the data access and scope, that's a pretty big one.
Yeah.
There's a lot of.
Yeah, that's going to take a while.
Okay.
Let me see if I'm going to have to shrink this a little bit. I really want to get it in one page if we can. And then just. All right.
There you go.
Yeah.
Or is this Exelon edits? I assume.
Yeah, so the first part of right after the colon, that's all
Mhm.
kind of editorial, which is inappropriate for regulations. The regulations are supposed to tell us what to do, not kind of discuss what electric system planning covers, a broad array of potential data source. I mean, that's in comments or that's in some other input. So we suggest just starting from the
2, right?
2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And then we added to the extent not restricted. This may change because of how we're dealing with stakeholders.
Right.
But we put in not to the extent not restricted by confidentiality requirements. So if we're gonna go with stakeholders, over our concern, we seem to be going with stakeholders have the ability to get confidential information, and so I guess that first part would go away.
Right. Right. Any big objections to the proposed edit, or at least focusing on the struck out portion?
Yeah, I think that first struck out portion was sort of added to provide discussion in absence of this one was one of those ones that was TBD for a while and saying this
Okay.
was important but not defined. So I think we'd be fine with that.
Great.
All right, so here's where we're left. All right, do we need to say defined by the electric company, because it's already covered that you're going to provide a discrete meeting point? Or no, okay, I'm getting that mixed up.
Let's see, allow stakeholders the opportunity to provide discrete data points at pre-identified time periods. I don't know. I mean, we go back and forth with this pre-identified time period thing. Sometimes we put the actual time period and sometimes we leave it as is. But I guess if we're going to say pre-identified time periods and be ambiguous, we would say defined by the electric company, just to make it very clear that
It's not the commission setting
it's
it.
not, or it's not up to others where to define our input.
Right.
So I would advocate for keeping it in since we're using the generic phraseology.
All right, what about this wording here? This seems like odd to me.
And see and understand.
Sorry, where are you?
It's
The highlighted
under 4A.
part of A.
Oh, okay. And see and understand to what extent those inputs. Yeah, isn't that just our feedback responses?
Yeah,
We spend all this time on feedback responses, so they provide the data, and then we have to provide responses eventually. I mean, it won't be right after, right? Because we use those inputs. We take those inputs, we decide what inputs to use, and the feedback that we get, and we decide what to use. I mean, I consider inputs feedback, and then we eventually have to respond to that feedback, and then so that would be where they see and understand to what extent those inputs were incorporated.
so can I just get rid of all of this?
I would, after all the changes we made today, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Public.
And then the public, so we originally had this when we were cabining off, the confidential information. So I think public goes away. Well, okay, wait, public to a broad, so this is where stakeholders is going to get us into problems, right? A broad array of stakeholders is not what the defined term stakeholders means. There's no broad array of stakeholders. It's a defined set of stakeholders. So if it's a broad array of participants or something, I don't even know, then it would be public data. If it's going to be among the stakeholders, then they get the defined set of stakeholders, and they would have the ability to sign non-disclosures and get confidential information. Easily accessed by, oh, so you've just, sorry, I'm looking at mine at the same time I'm looking at
Yeah.
yours. Provides collected data in a format that can be easily accessed by stakeholders, as we're defining it under PUA, right?
Yeah, I would think so.
Okay, then I'm good with that.
All right. I think that the first part of this deletion here, I really don't think we should delete this. I'm okay with deleting this part of it.
Okay, so what's left? Insurers, can we not use insurers? I don't think that word really, provides.
Provides or allows, yeah.
Yeah, provides, thank you.
Provides to have visibility or provide stakeholder visibility into it. Yeah.
Let's see. There's got to be something better than visibility.
Transparency.
Transparency. Although, I guess this goes back to one of the, yes, transparency would be preferable, but this goes back into the question of, are we now shadow planning? And this really feels like shadow planning. I don't know why stakeholders need system characteristics pertinent to evaluating. I mean, I don't know how.
I think the key is pertinent to evaluating your plans, and I think that while the commission doesn't want a shadow planning process, as expressed in its orders, I do think they want the stakeholders to have enough information to provide their assessments of your plans. The whole intent of this whole proceeding is to reduce some of the burden, when we get into rate cases, notwithstanding other things, but that this proceeding is intended for. But, I feel like, stakeholders need to understand, how you're deriving your plans and
Now, what do we mean by system characteristics? I guess that's if you define it really broadly. I mean, it could be anything.
Yeah, I mean, that's our concern is
Right.
suddenly some stakeholders will claim that everything that we have in our planning process is pertinent and is system characteristic. And well, why don't we just say transparency into data and assumptions? Because that's what we talk about.
that's what I put.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ethan, go ahead, sir.
I actually just got covered.
Oh, all right, very good.
And I would get rid of pertinent. I'd just say data and assumptions used in electric system plans or something like that. So that
Used to develop or
yes. That makes sense to me now. Instead of use, that should be developed. Yep.
Now, here it says data sources, so I would like to say
That's fine.
data sources here too.
That's fine.
And all right, so I'm just recommending. All right. The next item here, I don't have a problem with that, but this was, again, that the commission's desire.
Sorry. Let me I'm trying to go down my notes at the same time you go on yours. So you are where on 5?
Are we on market prices? John?
No, I was at already approved
Okay.
reports, retirements and additions. They had just a minor change there. I can put it back up there.
Yeah.
And I accepted that.
Okay. Thanks. So we just think that the first sentence says it all.
Yeah, you.
To shall coordinate with PJM as appropriate.
All right.
What was Andre, what was the concern with coordinate with PJM as appropriate?
So really what you're getting to is the first sentence, right?
Mm-hmm.
We do, I don't think that this this second sentence with things like achieve the benefits of coordinating DR aggregations, that means nothing. So like there's too much ambiguity in here.
Okay.
But we as a normal part of our distribution system planning, we do look at PJM's forecasts and things like that. So it's not that we're doing it in isolation, but what you really want is this first sentence, and the second sentence just introduces unnecessary ambiguity. So we got rid of that.
Okay.
And we do our own level of coordination with PJM or consideration of PJM forecasts is a better way to say it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
All right.
I have a quick comment. I was just reading back because, something that struck me as number 6 there was getting modified is on one hand, I agree with maybe trimming it, but then having it be market prices just to consider DERs and VPPs that participate in the wholesale market. Maybe that phrasing of VPPs and DERs that participate has a connotation that they already are on there versus the language from the order 91490 under the consensus items for number 4 kind of has a statement that says regulation should require coordination between the utilities and PJM, and then in parentheses, i.e. benefits of coordinating aggregation and expanded DER participation. So I think that phrase of like having a forward-looking sense of not only considering something that's already happening because of PJM, that bringing it back to that coordination aspect for purposes of expanding. I don't know that we want to lose that.
Can you put that wording in? Can you?
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat.
Wording in the chat. I'm going to just throw it in there and see how we.
Yeah, I'll just put that last sentence because there's some other preamble in the order, but I'll give the page reference.
Well, I was hoping you would just copy and paste it though into the chat.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful to have the whole context, Andy, so we know what the.
Okay.
Does it have to be market prices? Is that really what this one is about? Now that
Because we were following the JADE process roadmap, so all these titles are basically, even this was questioned, but this is how it's labeled in the JADE process map. So we were trying to stay consistent with
Hey,
that.
John, it's Damon. I had my hand raised, but can I jump in on that one real quick?
Yeah, please, Damon. Yeah, well, I was going to get to you.
It's okay.
Wasn't ignoring you.
Not to provide legal advice, but I will. I don't think we should use market prices because I think it'll probably run afoul of the Hughes decision at some point. Like a lot of this language, to the extent we're talking about wholesale market pricing, that's going to create concerns. So I would just avoid it altogether by suggesting that the planning process should reflect consideration of DERs and VPPs that help to resolve PJM system constraints or something like that. But I would avoid references to pricing altogether. That's a recipe for concerns, not necessarily by us as utilities, but by other stakeholders that actively participate in those markets. So I would just be careful about that.
Yeah, that would be the one exception. Can I say wholesale markets? Or
I mean, it feels like we're concerned about planning, right? I mean, we're concerned about system build. You know, how can we avoid build in the PJM across the PJM system through distribution level investments that ultimately the cost of which will be borne by our customers? That's great. That's laudable. I mean, that fits certainly within our mission. I just would be careful about anything that suggests that this commission or Maryland is mandating action that could somehow influence the markets. That's a no-no.
Regulations should require.
Yeah, this is what.
And as discussed, we have a new agency coming that's going to be doing all of this stuff. So.
Yeah, and I guess. I don't know. I mean, we already coordinate to a degree with the PJM as much as we can.
Yeah, but if this is explicitly in a commission order, I think we need to somehow fit it in there.
I mean, I think ultimately it's about making sure that our distribution system plans reflect upon opportunities to avoid investments or build on the transmission system, right? And that's what we're really trying to do. To the extent there's an opportunity to address a constraint or a concern on the distribution system, that's what we're trying to achieve here. That through the planning process. We're not trying to influence markets.
Yeah.
So I don't have wording off the top of my head, John, but I think that's the goal.
Subject clear. I'm just going back and looking at the order.
So what, can we take this back? And unless Chuck, you come up with something.
Oh, no, it's I'm looking at it now. I think I was actually gonna say something to that extent. Why don't we put a pin in this and come back and look at it?
Yeah, I think
I don't know that I'm going to be able to thread the needle here in while everybody's watching me.
All right. So what I'll do is sorry,
Yeah, it's on page 4, paragraph page 5, paragraph 4. It was a consensus item. All right.
page 5,
paragraph 4. PJ Interconnection LLC DERQ.
And what document?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at order 9/1490. That was the one that was issued in on January 21st of this year.
What was the first two? 89?
91490.
91.
490.
Okay. All right, so we'll just flag that. Thanks, Andy, for reminding us of that. All right.
So can I just point something out? Sorry, someone just gave me the language. I mean, that paragraph 4 says we'll consider DERs that will be participating in the wholesale market and distribution planning. And that's what that first sentence says. And then I don't know what the rest of this
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
is.
The clarifying language, I think, makes it muddies it more.
Yeah, it
It's
looks
for
like example.
DERs that participate in wholesale market and in distribution planning. Then there's some examples.
All right. Well, let's think about it. We're not going to solve it today.
Right.
Yeah, there seems to be a nod towards like future policy under FERC 2222, so maybe it was just highlighted for that reason. But yeah, I agree. It's the pair. I don't know what to make of that middle clarifying language, but in terms of what should be included here, but I think all I was keying in on was that last sentence.
That was language championed by David Cathan of Sierra Club.
Yep. Yeah, he was a big fan of that first use policy. I remember that discussion. Should require
But that's also an example only.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think everything after that first sentence is more or less an example.
And I would argue that the first sentence is already captured in what we have. So that's why I was wondering if we could just leave it as is, but we'll take it back and look at it.
Right. Fair enough.
Under goals and objectives, what's wrong with policy associated metrics? Like there are policy associated metrics out there for some things. I mean, there's targets for, EVs, there's targets for, renewable power, things of that nature. So,
John, this is again where metrics are reporting, not planning. So that was like including metrics in the planning didn't make sense. State policies does, but it was just the use of metrics that didn't make sense to us.
so should it be targets?
Yeah, that's fine.
Samarin, go ahead.
Right. I'm not sure if I agree with matrices are not used in planning, because in the reliability docket, for example, there are matrices, planning matrices, that the companies plan to, come up with projects to meet those plans, matrices like SAFE and SADE. But I guess I'm okay with targets as well, or matrices.
Yeah, I think the way we're defining metrics in the definitions, maybe we need something for target, which argues for getting rid of, the way we're defining planning metrics is one thing, but I think you plan to targets, you report on metrics is what I'm getting at. So I guess I like to leave it at targets.
Including policy associated targets.
Can we get rid of policy
targets?
Targets, policy
Yeah.
target.
Policy
Targets.
I mean, is there a difference between state policies and state policy targets?
Yeah, I guess I don't see the difference either.
Well, there's state policies, for instance, to achieve 3 gigawatts of energy storage. There may be a policy target for an electric company to be allocated a portion of that.
Okay.
That's why I think it's good to have the associated in there, because you may be allocated a portion of a target, like in the energy storage.
We'll just
I'd like to put that back in.
I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other.
All right, let's move on. We'll have one last shot at some of this.
All right. Electric companies shall develop as feasible. Okay. Electric companies shall use hourly data.
We were just trying to make the wording more crisp on a lot
Yep.
of.
Yeah, I have a problem with number 2. Because I do think that the goal is you certainly can't do some of the planning that we want to have in the future without using hourly data. So I don't view it as hourly data as inputs to the development of forecasts. I think you want to have forecasted hourly data, which
We rely on hourly data to do our forecasting in the 8720. We don't do hourly forecasting unless one of my engineers wants to tell me I'm wrong. That's my understanding. So we use our hourly data as inputs for our forecast.
Yeah, I guess, John, I'm trying to understand it, right? Isn't it a little bit circular to say utilities shall conduct hourly forecasting as inputs to develop forecasts?
well, that's the problem here.
I think it started from the DER and load forecast nature of how they sort of were included, and so I guess I think the way that, and I believe some of the red lines were part of my additions because the commission order was, to take the joint Exelon utilities starting point of modernizing and conducting hourly forecasting. So I think we do need to keep the hourly forecasting as like for DER forecasts. How we specify what goes into that, I think is a different point. But the way I had it written as inputs to the development of forecasts meant you conduct your hourly DER forecasting and then that goes and gets kind of combined into the overall load forecast. But I'm willing to see where people think on that.
Yeah, I think that the hourly data is inputs to development of forecast. I mean, one of the problems is Potomac Edison, is going to have to use load shapes for forecasts because they don't have AMI, whereas AMI utilities will have hourly data as inputs. So, it's one of those things where I think this would cause Potomac Edison a problem as it's currently suggested.
Should we just throw in an as feasible in there as well?
Yeah.
Actually, I have a kind of global comment on that as feasible language because I see it repeatedly below.
Right. Yeah.
And for other items, I think that's for discussion later as we get to them. But for this one, I was again checking the order language, and for DER forecasting, I think the commission pretty clearly spells out on the bottom of page 9 that while the commission expects, I'll put this in the chat, but while the commission does expect that each utility will modernize on their own kind of time scale and that there's differences among them, they specify specifically that utilities may request waivers for good cause, that these are reasonably delayed. So I think, I hear the earlier discussion, I think from others that that's not preferred or whatnot, but the fact that it's in the order as saying this is the regulation or this is the expectation, and then if you can't meet that, then there's ways to issue or request a waiver for good cause. I think at least for DER forecast, I recommend leaving it as such.
Yeah, it certainly seems that the commission wants everybody at least moving that way. But I think that's a good point, Andy. Yes, sir, Mark.
Hey, good afternoon, Judge McLean and work group. Mark Zuka from Potomac Edison. I think we're good with this. I know you mentioned, not having AMI, which definitely is a concern here. I mean, we do use hourly data as inputs. I mean, it's just maybe hourly data at the substation level, for example. So I think as long as we're not specifying that we need hourly customer data, that should be adequate.
All right.
Thank you, sir. So should it be, thank you, Mark. Should it be development of load forecasts or? Because I think Jacob had said something about that earlier. Hourly.
And I mean, perhaps, we're
talking about DERs here.
Right. Okay. So DER forecast. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sean. Sean, if you're talking, we can't hear you. Sean? All right, we'll come back to you, sir.
All right.
Maybe you can't hear us.
I accepted a few of the minor typos, but this, we need to discuss this thing at the bottom.
Judge Mark again. I guess if this is referring to using hourly data from existing DER, then I guess we wouldn't. Maybe I'm confused as to what hourly data we're talking about here.
Well, we're definitely in DER forecast, so you know, there's going to be a corresponding thing under load forecast, but we're in DER forecast. I mean, how are you going to be able to forecast DERs in the future? I mean, you would need have some forecast that's on an hourly basis, because, you know, for instance, you're going to have energy storage, you know, charging, you know, at night, and then basically, you know, offsetting peaks during the day. So you need to have some way of developing hourly DER forecasts.
I mean, generally, we're considering how the additional load would affect our peak load forecast. So in that sense, we are looking at, you know, during the peak hours, you know, what is the contribution? So, I mean, we're using hourly data, but not necessarily creating an hourly forecast. Like, we're not forecasting what it's going to be each of the 24 hours of the day, for example.
Well, the difference is, in my opinion, I mean, you know, there's load that, you know, is basically, you know, consists of, you know, everything that's combined, but then there's load that you control, because you can, you know, in the future, you're going to be able to, you know, like with dry back pilots and things like that, to be able to send signals to VPPs and be able to, you know, control those DERs. So you need to be able to forecast your ability to do that in planning. So I do think it's an hourly component to the DER forecasting.
Sean, you want to jump in, sir?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Barely. Can you turn your mic up a little bit, or your volume up a little bit?
Sure. How about now?
It's a little bit better. But we got you.
Okay, I just wanted to comment on the hourly data information. You know, at SMECO right now, we are using AMI for hourly data, but that's more so for rate design and power flow modeling. Right now, we're not able to directly incorporate that hourly data into load forecasts. I just wanted to make that up.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, this is Jacob. I want to jump in here as well. I think if the ultimate intent was for this to reflect the Exelon Utilities recommendation and some of the 3 points that were kind of had reached consensus, as kind of like the commissioner, I think, was using that as the starting point, right? I think that the recommendation that we had wasn't necessarily about using hourly data as inputs, but about developing hourly forecasts. And so, you know, for number 2, I think it might be important. Like right now, it's written that just saying we should use hourly data as the inputs. And I don't think that's where we want to specify the hourly piece, but I think we want to say, you know, develop hourly DER forecasts.
Which is in line with what I was suggesting, that you have to have some ability, especially for things that you control. I agree that you got to aggregate. You know, if you're just looking at the substation level, you're going to be aggregating, you know, DERs that you don't control, along with, you know, other load to into your forecast, because you really don't have any control, and even visibility. But to the extent that you have you know, DERs that you do control, you need to put them into your forecast.
We just want to come back to this one,
Well, yeah, I'd like to leave it at that and then,
or leave it as is and let people comment.
yeah,
Yeah, I will say, I think I'm the source of the confusion, and I think Jacob cleared it up, so I'm gonna stay quiet.
well, I think this aligns with what Jacob was recommending. So let's circle on it.
Okay.
This last part, I think we covered this in B of in 04B because we're talking about advanced capabilities there. So I'm aligned with trying to get it out of here. In fact, I don't know that we need 3 at all because we covered it in B. Because that's where we're talking about our annual plan updates and plans. So can we just get rid of all this?
Fine with us.
Where did you say it's covered, John? In B?
Yeah, I'll 4B.
Down in the next section. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then is the presumption then that that if it's not specified in the DER forecasting section of the regulations, that because the order language included the directive to continue improving specifically the DER forecasting methodology, that would be the reference therein, or what would you?
Well, we can, if you feel uncomfortable, we can add forecasting in here too. You know, like I consider it part of planning processes.
Yeah, I do as well. I guess I just wondered if B is going to be the end all for where we reference.
Yeah, because this is
capability
again,
improvements.
this is where you're recording in your electric system plans and your annual electric system plans, and that's what that particular reg was pointing to. So I think this covers it. Because if you go back and I forget where we were, but yeah, I guess I can. Unfortunately, this is going to undo what I just did. But oh, yeah, I don't want to do that. I lost the one change. Maybe. All right, so here's where we were. And I feel like that's covered in 0.04B.
Yeah, and I agree, tend to agree that forecasting would be under planning, but I'm looking again at page 9, and I'll put in the chat for what the commission says toward modernizing forecasting methodologies in particular.
Yeah, and so that's why I added it here. Would that help me be compliant with the order?
Those existing plans for.
I think so. Yeah, I'll take a look, but I think that's good.
All right.
Okay. All right. So we only got 45 minutes. We're going to be able to do this. I don't know.
It sounds like an artificial time limit.
Yeah, I'm going to get rid of the as feasible for now because of the earlier discussion. Oh, I think I accepted it. I think we can accept a lot of this. So here we're talking about low forecast, but now we're talking about the hourly impacts of DER as feasible. So I actually feel like this is confusing the situation. Well, it does say, okay, as specified in D of this regulation. All right, I see what this is saying. I don't know where to go with this. This is a lot.
Are we going to keep in the as feasible just for starters?
Well, I was going to get rid of that.
Right. Okay.
But
I thought we were okay.
I think you just got rid of forecasting, John. It looks like that's just been.
No, well, that was one of your recommended.
Oh, I'm on the wrong one. Oh, I see. Okay, thanks. I always thought we were still up on E.
Yeah, so I go back.
Yeah, I think that this one in one, I think the forecasting comes back. Hourly impact. Wouldn't it be hourly forecasting of DER rather than hourly impacts? Since we just settled on, we do hourly forecasting of DER.
Yeah. Well, it's referring to D, which is here. I think the intent of this is that the load forecast has to incorporate the DER forecast.
Right. I'm saying I'm putting back in forecasting because we struck it.
Where?
But we say, sorry, on E1, the one that refers back to D.
There we go.
Yeah, okay. I had already done that. I'm sorry.
Oh,
That's
okay. But would it be hourly impact of DER forecasting, or would it be hourly forecasting of DER based on our past conversation? And maybe the engineers can vote.
Well, how do we say it here?
I think we ended up with
hourly DER forecasts.
Yeah.
So if we want to stay consistent, hourly.
Yeah. Yep. I agree.
Sorry.
Long day.
Turn off my camera.
You're in good company.
Oh, I don't know what I just got rid of.
Jump in, Mark.
Thanks. We'll definitely have to get back to the group before, between this and the last meeting. But I'm thinking based on the discussion, it's something like hourly forecasts as known for DER. Certainly if we have a grid services program the utility runs, we're going to include that hourly forecast in our system plan. But most of the DER, we will have much more limited information on it. So I guess, is this intended to be a holistic DER forecast?
When you go back to the JADE process map and they separated them in the JADE process map, I feel like the intent has to be that you have a separate DER forecast from a load forecast, and then in your planning you combine the two. And I don't think we should be referring to DER forecast and load forecast because it's already accounted for. When you analyze it, you're going to be considering your DER forecast and your load forecast, but I think your load forecast is something different. And to Mark, to your point, if you have no visibility of the DERs out there because you don't have control of them, you don't have telemetry, it's just going to show up as load.
And I think that's exactly where I'm going here.
Yeah.
Is that, where we know about it, perhaps for new additions or maybe large projects or stuff we can control. Absolutely, that makes sense. But yeah, I don't know that we have the ability to create a holistic DER forecast.
Right. I think that the intent for the planning, if you have control, is to use it to affect your peaks. If you have no control over it, it's just load.
Go ahead, Damon, jump in, please.
Yeah, I think I may be carrying forward this discussion. So I guess we really haven't talked much about cost impacts in this work group at all, to my recollection. And so when I read a statement like this, it reads as a mandate to develop DER forecasts. And maybe that's the overall intent here. But I just think that we need to be mindful of that could be a very costly endeavor for a whole host of utilities and certainly for SMECO. And so using a word like available hourly DER forecasts, would be, I think, beneficial to addressing some of those cost questions that we are certainly very concerned about.
Ethan, go ahead, sir.
And to Damon's point, in some ways we are getting ahead of the commission's order and pre-designing pieces of these regulations that are actually going to be that should be the subject of the stakeholders of each individual utility. And, we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves when we start mandating what kind of technologies and investments the utilities individually should be making, when the stakeholders who are actually going to meet in the future haven't been able to weigh in yet. And that was the original language of the order, was to set up a non-rate case, non-litigated method, proceeding for non-technical stakeholders to participate in their utilities distribution system planning.
Well, I don't disagree, but I feel like this is a different issue, because I do think the commission also elsewhere, and I think Andy had already put it in the chat, all utilities should have modernized their forecasting. So I don't know how you can do things in the future, do effective planning without being able to account for DERs that, to offset peak loads. The commission with the Drive Act is starting out, but late, they'll eventually transition into permanent programs. You need to be able to forecast the fact that you got things out there that you can control peaks with, because the whole goal is to, have a more efficiently planned system, and you're not overbuilding because you're using those resources at your control to manage peaks. So you can't do that unless you're looking at some sort of hourly forecasting.
All right, we ready to move on, John, you think?
I don't know. I'm
I
recommending getting rid of any reference to DER forecast and load forecast, because I really feel like the planners put the two together when they're developing or running their analysis. So
And I think Mark spoke to that, and I don't say Mark agreed. Obviously, it's his decision, but I think you and Mark were kind of on the same page, and I'd say I think that makes sense to us, or at least to myself as well, that they're two separate forecasts that then get put together
in the analysis
during the planning and everything.
Yeah. And this, I think, is something's happening here. I seem to be deleting more stuff than I planned on. Probably because it reverts to the previous page, but I'd like to be able to accept some of these. I think utilities or incorporate load impacts from transportation and building electrification. I would rather say based on known information, or not even say that, because it's really, you need to have assumptions for this. So I don't know that known information is the same thing as assumptions. But you need to be able to, companies need to be able to understand the impacts of electrification, of EVs and building electrification. I think known information is one, but some of this is you're going to have to make some assumptions about adoption curves and stuff like that, just like we did in the electrification study.
I think that the concern here with the based on known information was that you have, well, in other jurisdictions, when we've tried to get information about some of the load in some of these areas, we cannot get developers to provide it to us. And so, you know, yeah, I guess you can make certain assumptions, but if you aren't getting a realistic picture of what's going on in the jurisdiction, then I don't know how good those assumptions are. And so this is kind of protecting the utilities, because we have not seen developers be very forthright about their plans, because they view it as a competitive disadvantage talking about what they're about to do.
Well, I just recall the electrification study and the disputes we had about that. There were some things we knew where we were starting from with EV penetration, for instance, and we knew what the Advanced Clean Car Act required, and we also had EIA data out there, and somehow we had to put all that together and make some assumptions about you know, electrification adoption moving forward, knowing where your starting point was to some extent. And even for building electrification, we had to make assumptions about what the cutover temperature was for buildings, where they would, you know, if you had a heat pump, where you would go to, you know, electric resistance heating, because that turned out to be very important, you know, because they were using a weather model, and that, you know, how many days a year that you get to that temperature. You know, so there's a lot of things that have to be put into this. So I just think the best that you could say is based on known information and assumptions.
I think we're good with that, John.
Damon, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I don't know if I have any issue with this. I think it's really just reasonably ascertainable information. I think we're going to get more building energy performance standards and whatnot. We're going to be collecting more and more information in this space, and it certainly should be reflected in the planning process and in developing load forecasts. So, I mean, I think that's fine based upon known. I'm fine either way, either known information as you've written it or reasonably ascertainable. The point is, I'm sure every utility will do its due diligence to identify the information, some of which will be readily available, some of which won't be. Some of it needs to come through the Maryland Department of the Environment. Like, it's going to come through different agencies. So it's a coordinated effort. I think that's
right. I was just deleting while you're talking things that we've already agreed with when we heard DER forecasting and other minor things. So we're left with these items here. Yeah, this has to stay to some extent, because it was in the commission order. We can't get rid of that. We can pare it down or modify it, but the commission recognized that the forecasts were based on different assumptions, but they should be reasonably aligned. Meaning you have to explain why they might be different. So I would be, I think
Go ahead,
this
Ethan.
stuff that's highlighted could be deleted.
Reasonably aligned is kind of undefined, and I mean that's to me that opens up litigation. So maybe if we said shall consider.
I think the order says aligned.
Okay.
In fact, I think the order said reasonably aligned. Maybe not, but
these forecasts should be aligned to a reasonable extent with an explanation provided in DSP plans for differences at the system level. And that is on page 10.
I think reasonably gives you a little bit of more flexibility than just getting rid of it.
Okay, let's go with reasonably.
You just want to say aligned to a reasonable extent, John, or I mean, it might be a distinction without a difference, but you want to be true to the order.
Aligned to a reasonable extent. I'm getting thumbs up over here. And basically what you're just making sure is that your local forecast is never, your distribution forecast never exceeds your PJM forecast, and then you've got a problem.
I think this is the core of it. You just got to explain why they're different. When you sum them all up.
Okay, we can do that.
And I think we get rid of 3 just like we got rid of it in the previous one because it's covered in that B or 4B section. All right, hosting capacity. Oh, we didn't cover this item in load forecast.
Yeah, this one was us, I think. And this gets back to the shadow distribution system planning concern, because I don't understand why we need to provide a methodology for bottoms up or top down planning.
And I was going to add to that. I think in our going back to the whole, what's included in reporting, I do think in some level, to some degree, there's like discussions of methodology. I agree with Andrea, it may not be specified and laid out like this, and agree with those concerns, but I think within kind of what's included in the published or the preliminary plan includes some description of the electric system planning process, right? Current capabilities. And I think that reflects, or that would cover this information.
And where is that? Where are you looking at in regulation 4?
Section 4, F1, and then B, I think.
4F1?
Yeah. Right. So, and then B specifically. So if we're describing our current planning processes and capabilities, I think that obviously starts to speak to some degree, how are we doing our forecasting?
That. And I'm. Can we do that? So we don't lose it?
I mean, I guess,
Looks like
you know,
it's-
in some of the other examples where we've referred to B, we've kind of just left B as covering it versus adding in specific pieces. So I guess it might be strange that we're being specific here about one piece of that, not further defining that. But I mean, I don't think it's that big a deal if it's there, but just acknowledging that piece of it.
I think
Yeah, I
it's going to be important that to some of the stakeholders to know, you know, how you're developing these load forecasts. So I think it's more than just, you know, your capabilities. It's also your method. So I'm, you know, and OPC, I think, added this. So I don't feel like we should lose it, because I do think that it's important for stakeholders to know how you develop your forecast.
Yeah, I think, and this is Andy, I just reflecting on, I think, how we arrived at some of those additions from the earlier discussions in the work group. There was a fair number of comments around, well, basically, if you imagine even the Empower situation where you have a statewide or a service area wide energy efficiency forecast, and then you have to come up with some kind of allocation methodology to derive a substation specific forecast. And, you know, in the long term, maybe that migrates towards using household specific. I think in the previous work group report, there was a fair amount of like discussion around leveraging more household or region specific data. And then obviously things moved forward, but I think stakeholders in the most recent round, we still spent some time touching on wanting to reflect differences in customer class by substation or other factors like that, which, you know, that's what I was intending to cover with, like, what's the methodology for sort of merging these top down and bottom up methods, or somehow defining the allocation methodology. But I also kind of agree with Jacob on that one, and in the sense that there could be a lot of then caveats to this subpart F1B that are like, and this too. That's to my earlier comment. So I'm not opposed to keeping it here per se, but just recognizing that.
No, I appreciate that, Andy. And I think it's fine adding that in. To your point, John, I think it's an important one to call out within the planning process.
Yeah, I think let's go back to so all right. I like, Chuck, I would like to skip hosting capacity and go to the bottom, because I think we only have a little bit of time left. I think we can
That's fine.
chunk out a few of these at the bottom. So I'm going to accept all of these here. You know, the reason why this is in here, and I think there was a comment by Exelon, you know, why is this in here? It's because it's in the J process map. And even though the work group didn't cover it, I think both K and L are part of the J process map, and the commission order said that we should align our processes with the J process map. So I think that there needs to be, you know, some assessed results and some aspect of you know, program and project design, because it's in the J process map. The rate case filings thing, I know that's the commission's intent, that the plan should be, you know, somewhat reconciled in rate cases, meaning you have to explain something if it is new and wasn't, you know, an electric system plan that you're trying, you know, to include in a rate case. So this, you know, I'm a little bit concerned about getting rid of it.
Yeah, that's language right in the order. Page 7, top of page 7. Future rate case filings should provide explanations for projects that don't reconcile with the electric system plans. Not sure how we get around that.
That's fine. That was us. You can put it back. Thanks.
Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, on the first ones around assessing results, just wanted to comment on the change of shall to may.
Sure.
And recognizing, I think this isn't pointing to the order other than through incorporation of the JADE process. So understand that difference, that it's not sort of part of that core piece of the order per se, but I would add that I think there was a bit of discussion in section 4 on what should be included in the annual reports or the metrics section about, that if we do move this to a may, I guess it would probably prompt us to come back with, some different thoughts on the other sections, because like one example would be forecasting accuracy. Like I think having that even as a metric, maybe, which we've had the metrics discussion, obviously, and it hasn't reached that level of consensus, but that would be one of those things where if you just say may, then it probably won't improve over time as you sort of track like how well did my substation level forecast compare to what happened last time. So that's all. I just wanted to say if it's moving to a may, then we'll probably have thoughts on section 4 or the metrics. But
all right, thank you, sir. Andrea.
Yeah, I mean, so the issue with performance of our planning versus versus actuals, or where was it? Actual performance versus assumption, for instance, like we don't plan to actuals. We plan to the 90-10 or whatever it is. So we're never going to have actual performance meet plan if that's what we're looking for here. I don't really understand, frankly, what this says, but forecasting is not to actuals. Forecasting is to worst case, in case we have the few of those really, really high hot weather days, and our system has to perform overperform because it's I'm sorry, I'm actually on a sick day today, so I'm running low and my brain isn't working very well.
Andrea,
So
let me jump in.
That it is not coming out clearly, and maybe Ethan, you can finish my thought.
Yes, and we see this, and I consider this more of a rate case matter. This is something that we're going to be assessing in terms of prudency, because what happens is we do a forecast, we start making plans, and then the next year we revise the forecast. If the forecast now shows that something that 10 years out is not now 9 years out in the next year, is that a failure? No, it's not, because that's where the engineering knowledge comes in, the distribution system planning experience we have. We then adjust how we're doing things so that we're not building a substation for that 10th year out item until we are getting close in and we have certainty that it will be still in the forecast. And we've seen this in many areas. You'll have an area like in DC, the Ward 5 was supposed to explode with growth. There was a lot of discussion about how to deal with that explosive growth. And then COVID happened. And that growth did not materialize in a sizable manner. Does that mean that the 2018 forecast that said that there was supposed to be explosive growth was wrong? No, it was right based on the data we had. So this section is really, I'm not sure what it's trying to evaluate, honestly.
Well, it's trying to evaluate your planning process, and there needs to be a lessons learned aspect of your planning process. I can agree that that's the key part. So if a utility shall assess the results of their electric system plan to determine lessons learned and changes to
The future plans.
be implemented to future planning assumptions as appropriate. In fact, we don't even need to get into that, and changes to
Okay, you got 2 thumbs up there, John,
for what the planning assumptions.
from the utilities on that.
Can I? Okay, I guess I'll quit while I'm ahead then. I know that this was expressed in the order somewhere.
Yeah.
And I didn't find a better place to put it.
No, I think it's assessing results. I think that's fair. Unless you're going to make it like a separate section.
I mean, I think to your point, John, it was part of the order, so you recognize that some level of reconciliation. I guess the only piece of it I'd maybe flag is the cost variance, recognizing the DSP isn't really intended to be speaking to cost, or especially with some of the projects and stuff. So I'm not really clear how we'd be reconciling that. I think it would be more kind of on the scope and the projects. Like I think everything else, like you said, aligns with what the commission directed. I think that's the only piece I'm not sure matches the order.
Cool. Are you all right with this?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
So I can cover anything. All right. So let me project this for a minute. I think this is just restating some things that were said earlier. I know that contracting was discussed earlier, but program and project design, I would think that the utilities would want to, because it's left to utility discretion. I don't know why the utilities would have a problem with this, because it's really stating your authority over certain things. And I can get rid of this. That would make it.
I think that's fine, John.
All right, so I'm going to go up to choose solutions. I don't like the may, but I know where you're coming from. There may only be, got rid of the wrong one. There may only be one solution. So would that allow us to get rid of the may? You got to have a solution.
Sorry, hold on. We're looking at our notes. Just give me a sec. I think we're good.
All right, keep set with it. I think this was in the order, you know, that because there was a big dispute between feeder level and substation level, and the commission stated that substation was acceptable, except when there was a constraint at the feeder level, you needed to provide that information.
Yeah, I think we got rid of it at a minimum requirement because it's not necessary, because this actually specifically defines when we use substation and when we use feeder, which I thought was appropriate. Because that's what we're ultimately getting to, right?
If I'm looking at the right part of the order, looks like are we talking about granularity?
Yeah.
It looks like it's on page 7. Said the commission agrees that feeder level information should be provided as part of the planning process, but only in situations where there are system constraints that result in projects being proposed. Yada, yada, yada.
All right. I think that's what it's,
Yeah. The details of which shall be proposed by the work group and regulations.
Right. Unfortunately, I don't like to agree with, I'm up in screen and evaluate possible solutions, but since we don't have the framework fully built out, I almost feel like we have to say that when available.
I agree.
But
I think, John, when it becomes available, then we have to use it, right?
yeah.
But the problem with having it in there without when available is we're now, once it's in regulation, we're supposed to be using it. And if it doesn't exist, that means.
No, I understand. I'm gonna use the same evaluate a solution or possible solutions. It's the same thing that we did down there to get rid of the may. So I don't feel we should have a may there. Is that okay? The highlighted part.
Utility screen and evaluate a solution, a possible solution. Yeah, I think that's fine.
All right. Identify possible. See, we're almost less than 10 minutes, but we're almost through. I agree. Starting point is clunky. Near-term objective is better. Feasible is probably, in a planning sense, more applicable.
Well, I mean, that's one where I would question if it's accurate enough or defined enough, like who determines what's feasible. But this we had a discussion on, and the all possible, I think, was already a compromise because we got tired of arguing about it. So I'm not going to go to bat too much on this one, but
yeah, I just know that you know, like when you're doing interconnection, you have a feasibility study, so you don't have a possibility study. So I was just recommending that we accept the Exelon change there, because feasible has been used in a planning sense before.
Go ahead, jump in, Ethan. Oh,
And yeah, just, feasible as much as anything goes to, when we're talking about bringing in outside planning, we're going to have suggestions that are going to be, as I think the judge referred to it earlier, off the wall, but we're also going to have advertisements being suggested. And so feasible needs to be, I like the feasibility as it refers to feasibility studies as being appropriate.
Yeah. And I agree that this is too broad, so system constraints is better.
on this one, it's a may versus shall question for me again on the non-wire solutions. I think in previous iterations it was a shall, and then I might have got changed, and just wanted to reiterate that. I think the order is pretty clear on the role of non-wire solutions that the commission sees for this distribution or this system planning exercise, and as I searched for non-wire solution or NWS, I found only a couple references, and they were both like may consider or, you know. So to the point, Ethan, you raised earlier on the metrics, where you mentioned that Al's depiction that those categories were already covered, to the extent they're not actually required by the regulation, I have worry and concern about that.
Yeah,
What is required by the regulation? I'm sorry, can you clarify?
Yeah, I'll send it in the chat.
No, what isn't required in the regulation is what I just didn't understand that.
About for this one, for identify possible solutions, it's utilities may consider non-wire solutions versus shall, or it's actually should in the regulation. So should consider, it's maybe the shall, should, may continuum. I don't know where it lands, but I'll leave it to others to discuss.
Well, can I suggest, because I think the utilities probably can't do non-wire solutions for every problem. So can I say, if feasible, electric companies shall consider non-wire solutions, because it may not be feasible.
Well, the way the order reads, it says commission concludes that identifying possible NWS solutions to grid needs is important, and the utilities should present their rationale for solution selection in plans, including why alternative solutions were not selected.
Yeah, so I'm fine with the feasibility study and aspect of that. I get it.
Right.
It's going to be not applicable in certain situations, but as long as it's expected that you sort of are transparent with the feasibility criteria and selection, then I think we could align on that.
Yeah, and then the very next sentence is commission encourages the utilities to creatively support state policy goals with NWS alternatives.
All right.
Yeah, so to me, that kind of just means like you should present the rationale, meaning for each solution, you're considering the alternative and then saying why it wasn't feasible. So the onus of proof is sort of the other way.
So if we make this change, do we need to make another change?
Well, I think the consideration is what determines the feasibility. So I just would leave it at utilities should. You could change shall to should if you want to be aligning with the order.
Yeah, you can't use that in regs.
You can't.
May,
Okay.
you can use shall. You can't use should.
Also, to clarify, the order language is the utilities. I just lost it. Should present the rationale for solution selection, including why alternatives solutions were not selected. So that alternative solutions isn't specific to non-wire solutions.
Correct. Yeah, the next sentence says that they're encouraged.
Right. So I guess what I was saying is I think it's probably appropriate with as it's written currently with the if feasible and the shall.
Yeah, that works.
All right.
I mean, if feasible doesn't really. I don't know. I could live without the if feasible. Because I mean, if it's feasible, you consider it. I mean, you can consider it all the time. But
Well, how about the?
So
I just feel like they're not going to be able to consider non-wire solutions in all cases.
oh yeah, absolutely. Well, do we need to throw in there the language from the order that says what they have to, unless we've already gone over this, why alternative solutions weren't selected?
That's
Okay.
that's probably more in the in this section.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I didn't want to.
Yeah. Looking here to see if we put it.
Yeah, it's under J1, I think, as we say, choose the solutions and including why alternatives solutions were not selected.
Okay, there you go.
J1. Okay. Okay. Thank you. All right. So All right, so what do we need to do with this section?
Go ahead, Ethan.
Actually, I'm sorry. I was realizing I need to jump to another call. Pardon me.
Oh, okay. There was a big sigh. I know you're going to miss us. All right. All right. Pursuant.
I just accepted it.
Is this HC? Yeah. So part 1C, I think I might have included that last time, just to be the converse as we discussed last time about the host capacity upgrade plans. But this one is more when you have a substation upgrade due to load, you want to consider future hosting capacity needs.
Okay, so does that capture it?
I think so.
All right. The deletions here, you know, again, I was quoting statute here. So I don't like these modifications here.
So I'll tell you why, just so you know. So it's often conflated. So distribution system planning and the planning for load is often conflated, and we do it a lot in this group with reliability, and we have a whole different reliability planning. And so this seems to be pushing towards planning for reliability. I mean, just the way it's saying it rather than planning for, you know, capacity.
But that's in the statute. That's in the statute. You know, and the way I interpreted it, you know, is that you know, if you have solutions out there that are going to improve reliability, you should be considered. I don't know how you divorce, you know, putting VPPs and you know, improve reliability and even resiliency like you're doing at Alconnect. I don't see how you divorce that in some ways from electric system planning.
They're just different processes. I mean, that's why we try to keep them, like, we have totally different processes for planning for reliability and planning for load. And yes, load, the investment that we do to get rid of constraints will have reliability impacts, but we're not directly planning it for reliability and aged infrastructure and those types of things. That's a totally different process. So that's why we get, we're careful about how we use reliability. And I know that it's kind of like people just throw it in there, which I think has happened in the statute, but it is a different planning process.
All right. Well, Chuck, this is your call, but I really feel like we should.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, I understand the concern, but it's specifically in the statute.
And it's in the distribution planning part of the statute, which is 7804.
I give up.
I've given up. Well,
Right.
Chuck, we're at 4 o'clock, so it's your call.
I mean, that's, yeah, I mean,
we got 3 more sections.
I mean, I think we've made some good progress. Why don't we call it a day? And John, why don't we coordinate tomorrow and go through figure out exactly what we need for our last meeting, and kind of expectations going forward.
Yeah, and I think I'll send out another copy after I meet with you of where we stand, and then we'll try to get final edits for the next meeting.
Sounds good.
And in the meantime, you know, we'll need to fill in some of these definitions.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, we'll try and give everybody the homework that they need to do. But I mean, it looks like we made progress. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. Hopefully.
All right.
All right. See y'all.
All right. Hope you feel better, Andrew. Thanks for your patience today.
Yep.
I know this was a marathon. We'll see you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.